What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the third album by hip-hop duo Twiztid. Basically this product is called The Green Book and it came out in the summer of 2003. So the thing about this particular product is this is a pretty heralded product here just within the pitch behind it. It's one of the more popular ones from Twiztid's earlier days. I would definitely say the appeal behind this one is just a little bit more widespread. I would definitely feel like definitely has like a mildly more commercial aspect about it, just to be able to say that compared. Like Freek Show is definitely one of the more notable type ones within the pitch back in those particular days. This came out around a good time in like late 2000 pitches like that. It's like the Juggalo movement and like the initial kind of folks being on like the psychopathic records were starting to get their headway as far as those pitches can happen. Definitely some great times between like the Bizarre albums by ICP and some of those type pitches with Twiztid, but this particular one has that same sort of appeal. It's a little bit more like, I like the aspect behind this album at this being a lot more gothic within the pitch. This is like a gothic type product that also has like some horror aspects about it like usual. It's not quite as creepy as like I mean, it kind of is. It's within the concept of this. Is a little bit of makeshift on here, I would have to say. There's some good makeshift on this particular album, I would have to say, especially in the two singles, which at the time getting the two singles, there's a little bit of makeshift on this particular product. It kind of blends that with like the horrorcore type sound and some of those type of pitches, just the aspect of getting like that haunting, usual dredge about it with like the aspect of like some kind of relative workship type commercializes within the pitch. I mean, it's not quite near the concept of being full-blown commercial, but it has a little bit more of that compared to like Freek Show and Most Tasteless, some of those type ones I'd have to say just within the aspect. Two singles on this particular album, which is pretty good fare because both these have some relative commercial grabs about them. This is a pretty budgeted type project, has some big names on here compared to Freek Show and the previous one, Most Tasteless, and Mirror Mirror even, I'd have to say just within the concept. Lazy Bone from Bone Thugs is on here, Tech 9 is on here, Anybody Kill is on here, E40 is on here, which is pretty dope, Esham is on here, Bushwick Bill from Ghetto Boys is on here, Blaze You Dead Homie, like a production, at least one production from Mike E. Clark, which is ICP's producer. Some good type fare. So this is a pretty good type project within the underground type fare. Easily kind of a notable one. Virtually on the cusp of getting like a classic score. I mean, this is very much excellence here. This is one of Twiztid's best. I'd have to say this continues their prime years past like the late 90s and early 2000s. This was back when rock, rap, and horrorcore and juggalo type music was at its supremacy. Some of those type pitches between some of these hit albums. The Green Book was definitely a notable juggalo album. I'd have to say it continues to have that concept. I would also say ICP dropped an album. I don't know if it was, I think they dropped like Hell's Pit in 2004. I don't know if they dropped in 2003. They might have. I don't remember as full blown, but it's just some good type pitches. A lot of this stuff was happening. I know that Blaze You Dead Homie dropped an album in 2003, which is a pretty good pitch. I reviewed that back in September. Or maybe it was I reviewed Anybody Kill it. Anybody Kill It dropped an album in the spring of 2003. I reviewed that back in September. Pretty good pitch there. Blaze You Dead Homie had some good stuff. So it's just some good type of appeals within a lot of this. And this is back in some prime moments when Twiztid was basically like the lieutenant to like ICP around those particular times. Just some excellent type fare, just some great type pitches. And this, I do like the gothicness of this particular product. Just the usual kind of haunting fare of Twiztid, just the aspect of having a little bit of rise above within the pitch. It's the usual kind of haunting fare of Twiztid with a little bit of like amalgamated kind of, not necessarily pop rap, but just within the pitch of having a little bit of coming up for air as far as those pitches kind of happen with it, just within the tone. I just say the aspect behind it. So it's just a good concept here. Just virtual classic, just the impact. Probably definitely I would say a classic Juggalo album just within the pitch. It's definitely a banner album when you think of, just like when you think of banner rap albums, especially from the 2000s, you think of like Get Rich or Die Tryin', you think of the Eminem Show by Eminem, Chronic 2001, like Ludacris's Word of Mouth, some of those type of ones, and Jay-Z's The Black Album, some of those type of pitches. But this is definitely one of the banner front page type ones in terms of the aspect of like a Juggalo album from like at least between like 95 and 2005, some of those type pitches. It's a real nice aspect that has most of the big names on here in terms of that particular fold. The front runners in the 2000s at Juggalo fold. Those are some good type of POs. I mean, this is, yeah, I would just have to say this is going to be like usual type fare here. I just look within the tone behind it. It's just the concept. This is a little bit, but this is a little bit more commercial compared to Freek Show. Freek Show is a lot more sketchy. I really thoroughly enjoy that particular album. There's some great songs on there like People Are Strange and We Fall Apart and some of those type ones, and Bags, some of those type ones that just have some real gothicness. And I kind of feel like I do feel like Freek Show is a little bit more Halloween oriented. There's definitely some horror on this particular concept, but in terms of like the ghastliness, it's just kind of more amalgamated throughout like probably about late July to about mid-November, with not really getting so much in like the cold weather, but just the aspect of just having like the concept of just like some saunter type music going to get. There's plenty of hangout songs. There are some nightclub step out type songs on here, some of those type pitches I'd have to say. It's kind of within the tone of getting like some of that just usual hauntingness, just within a relative warm aspect to still have some hop and bops with the homies as far as those pitches can happen. So good type fare. Now Wikipedia does not denote the singles, unlike the Green Book page that has the article about it, but if you go to Twiztid's discography, you can see that there were 2 singles, one of which was Afraid of Me and the other one was Darkness, both of which are some autumn makeshift to kind of get here. So I'll talk about Afraid of Me first, because this is the most popular song off the album according to Spotify. Afraid of Me is the most popular song off the album according to Spotify. I'd say it has over 3 million plays. Afraid of Me is like a gloomy kind of pseudo sequel to I Fall Apart or We Fall Apart as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just more somber and like some good makeshift stretcher of a song kind of get here. Great. It's like a good makeshift stretcher kind of calm you to kind of get within that pitch. It's just kind of the tone. Just really like the same malaise, just the haunting type aspect. There's some real nice ones on here that particularly do that. Just really, this has probably one of the best beats on the album. I'd have to say Afraid of Me, just an excellent type pitch. Real reaching for like commercial radio just within the normal Juggalo type sense. It's a pretty good aspect of like a relative grab that comes up for air within the sense of having something relatively commercial but still underground to not lose their bass for those pitches can happen. It really works for like a good traverse, just kind of have thoughts on your mind, just some real talk type song kind of get within that pitch. It's real nice tone, switches it up from like the usual antics and shenanigans that Twiztid's usually on as far as those pitches can happen. Both of these are just more kind of makeshift stretchers. So Darkness is the second single, and this is another nice one just like that. It's like some autumn malaise to kind of get here, just a good post-grunge like evening ponder kind of have. Definitely ruminate, smoke a blunt, just some good traverse. So the single Darkness is just basically like a post-grunge kind of blaze, just October oriented, late September oriented, just within the pitch of having Twiztid on there. So some good type fare, just that usual kind of dredge of disc. Real deep thought on like a post-grunge type aspect of a song, I'd have to say. But that's the concept. So basically, out of the 20 songs in this particular album, there's at least 2 skits on here, one of which is Call Me and the other of which is the Green Book, the intro. So I just would say that narrows down to 18 songs. Out of those 18, I wound up recommending 14. So the only 4 songs I don't recommend would just be, or really, I wound up recommending not 14, but 15 songs. I wound up recommending 15 songs on here, so only 3 songs I don't recommend. This album is going to get when I said earlier that this album is going to get a virtual classic score, it is going to get a classic score, because I thought that I only recommended 14 songs, but I actually recommended 15, so this album is going to get a 10 out of 10. The only 3 songs I don't recommend would just be On the Other End, Bobby's Dad, and Fat Kids. So basically some of these type ones, like Fat Kids just kind of had like an awkward type production on there. It was just not quite as affable. A real short, quickie type song. It's a more personable type one, but it's just within the pitch that it just didn't nail the vibe as particularly as it probably needed to. Probably would have chosen a little bit more of a beat like Nicotine. I feel like that aspect behind that particular vibe of just Fat Kid Regrets as far as this pitch kind of having probably would have had a little bit more aspect. I mean, it felt like an in-between type song, but it was just kind of the pitch that, I don't know, it was not quite as affable, full-blown, I'd have to say about that one. Bobby's Dad was just trying to be like a rock rap kind of turn-up type song, just a one to get you hype and alert as far as those pitches kind of happen, but just didn't pull out the vibe nearly as well. I feel like it's kind of similar to some of the vibes off of Freek Show, like We Don't Die, some of those type pitches, but just didn't really. I mean, sometimes these rock rap songs work. It's just within the pitch. It just has to have like it just kind of reminds me of some of the vibes of Cottonmouth Kings. It just kind of felt like a Cottonmouth Kings kind of retread that just didn't pull out the vibes normally well as they kind of do within that pitch. So Bobby's Dad just wasn't one of those. And then On the Other End was another one that was pretty similar to Bobby's Dad, just within the pitch behind it. Just kind of like, On the Other End was just kind of like a crowd pleaser, kind of kickstarted in like a late summer type aspect as far as those tones can happen with it. But it just was not as notable, I'd say, within the tone. It's just not as affable one I'd commonly listen to as much. I mean, there's a bunch of gems on here. I definitely feel like some of the immediate ones would definitely be like Speculations with E40. I feel like Serial Killer with Tech Nine's a real excellent type one. I'd say Hum Shabam is a real nice one on here. That's an immediate one. I feel like the single Afraid of Me is a real immediate type one. These are some of the most ones that have the most viciousness about them. Hydro's a really great smoking song with Lazy Bone. I do like Frankenstein with Blaze You Dead Homie, some of these type of pitches on here, but it's just some aspects behind it. And of course, Darkness is a great song as well, just a little bit calmer, but still within the aspect. But there's definitely some club bops on here to be able to get some of those type pitches. I think there's at least one more club bop apart from Speculations and Hom Shabam, and just can't think of it right now. But so basically, just go ahead and talk about some of these. So Serial Killer with Tech Nine's a real nice one to kind of get here. It's like a thumping kind of horror stroll to kind of get within that tone. Just usual ghastly. It's like a usual kind of ghastly, twisted fare to kind of get here. Just a hop and bop, kind of grab supplies and plan a party. Some of those type pitches. So it's just one of those type ones. Kind of more on foot, I'd have to say, within the pitch behind it. Just kind of an aspect of just making some gas station runs, some of those type pitches, just within the tone, picking up a box of Swishers, picking up some smokes, a lighter, some of those type fares, getting a box of beer, some of those type pitches. I'd say just a real aspect to kind of figure out what's going to happen. It's a real excellent type fare to have Tech Nine on this song. Glad that he collaborated with Twiztid early back in their prime heyday as far as those pitches can happen, or at least when they had like a, that just when they were back when they were affiliated with ICP, some of those type pitches, good type tone. Tech 9 feels right at home with these folks as far as those pitch kind of happen, so some excellent type fare. There's some real nice bump on there, I'd say. Just usual type stuff, just takes back to like the Freak Show days. Marsh Lagoon with Violent J is a real nice one as well. This like a looming kind of horror makeshift dredge to kind of get here. It's kind of similar to like the singles, I'd say, but it's just kind of a mildly brighter, kind of extra thoughts type one to kind of get just a pleasant kind of cruise around, I'd say about this one. So it's the same sort of fare as like the singles, just not quite as malaise, not quite as anguished, I'd say within the tone. Just has a little bit of glimmer about it and like a bright kind of aspect about it, I'd say within the tone. I mean, it is like some typical kind of horrorcore within a sense, but it just is a little bit, has like maybe you're not in like a complete 10 out of 10 horrible mood, but maybe like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10 in terms of like a relatively foul mood. It's just within the pitch, a little bit of optimism within there, within the pitch behind it. Surprising kind of have Violent J on this particular song, just within the pitch behind it. Just typical type fare as some of those type ones. Just some excellent type fare with some of that type stuff. I definitely feel like these folks, Violent J, Shaggy 2 Dope, should have been on this album a little bit more. I mean, they were on ICP's label, but they weren't as much. Both of the ICP members were not as full blown on this project. I think they were on Freak Show a little bit more, but they definitely probably should have been on at least one or so more songs. Maybe Violent J on like a hook or something. That's kind of the appeal behind it. Some good type stuff. Speculations is one of the best songs on this album. Really enjoyed this one. The only real regret I have about this song is just the fact that the beat kind of switches up on E40's verse, which I definitely like. This has one of the best beats on this particular album. This definitely should have been a single or something. This has a lot of appeal, but it's just kind of the concept that the song just sounds better on the Twiztid members' parts, Madrox and Monoxide's parts as far as those pitches kind of happen. But Speculation's like a jazzy and excellent kind of nightclub blitz to kind of get here, just kick some raw dance energy. I would definitely feel like within that tone. This song's like an electro kind of We Don't Die from Freak Show, I'd say. Just a real type of appeal behind it. Just really feels like one of those, it's real great groove about it, just within the pitch behind it. A nice, good dance type one to kind of get within that tone. Probably one of the more sociable and commercial type Twiztid songs from like their early days, I'd have to say. I mean, I feel like Twiztid definitely had the energy, but the thing about this particular album is just the fact that it has some commercial jams on here. It's not quite as full-blown known just because they were always more underground, but it's at least within the pitch that if you do like, if you have like a solid enough taste in rap music and you kind of get tired of like the mainstream ones like the Nellies, the Ludacris's, the X-Tentations, the folks like that, the Young Thugs, the Futures, the Drakes, it's kind of a good concept to kind of take it to some of the roots of some of these and some of the underground type fare to get some of these bops. Because Speculation's definitely a highlight. I feel like the two singles, Afraid of Me and Darkness, are some real nice dredgy type ones for like some makeshift commerce. Serial Killer with Tech 9's pretty good gem. And there are some club gems on here like Nicotine and Ham Shabam that have that particular appeal as well. So speaking of Nicotine, this is a real nice one. This is a shorty of one just to be able to get here, but it's a real nice appeal. It's like a groovy kind of dark in-between to kind of have, just real nice in-between quickie to have some smokage to roll up a sweet, something like that. Just groove out, I would definitely say, and it's like some haunting ambience kind of get here. This has pretty similar production to Speculations. It's real nice night, electro kind of hop and bop within the pitch. It's a real nice thumper to kind of have within that. I do think it's Monoxide Child. This might be Monoxide who's on this particular song. Yeah, it's Monoxide Child who's on this particular song. He is a fan of like smoking cigarettes, some of that type fare, so it's a good type concept just to have this particular type song for just smokage. I mean, I would just recommend smoking like a Swisher Sweet with like some chocolate Thai weed, something like that, some sort of like, White Rhino, something like that in particular, just get some good blunts going, but it's just within the pitch, it is a smoking song. White Trash with Tattoos is a nice one as well. It's like a routine kind of hangout glaze kind of get here. Just a good saunter type music to kind of have. Just some gab. Movies definitely on. Pizza, Get Crunk kind of bop to kind of have it in particular. So it's just a good, nice one. Same sort of fare as some of those type ones like We Don't Die and just that typical kind of frat energy of like the Freak Show album. Some of those type pitches. Just normal kind of house party crazes. Just within the aspect of just being a little bit more of like a saunter type song. Just basic. Not quite as crazy where you're full blown getting blitzed, but just the concept there. There's probably some smoke in the air. Just loud music playing. Some of that type fare, maybe a couple women winding, some of those type pitches just within the tone. Just basic kind of kickback at like 6:15 p.m. before things really start to heat up. Some of those type pitches, just the initial kind of dap as far as those pitches kind of go along with it. Just a good kickback. Video games might be on, movies on, some pitches like that. I'd have to say good type tone. Hydro is an excellent one on here. This has Lazy Bone, which is a surprising pick because for the most part, when I think of the Bone Thugs individually getting featured, it's usually like Crazy Bone or Busy Bone, but it's a surprising pick. Getting Lazy Bone on here is a pretty good concept for that. It's like a Hydro is like a woozy kind of lucid kind of smoke tune to kind of get. Just feeling hella toasted. I would definitely feel like some hella toasted malaise here. It's a sleepy kind of sauntering homies dredge kind of get within this concept. So this real nice mellow type appeal. Twiztid obviously has to be good doing these smoking songs. This is definitely one designated to an obvious concept to just get hella torch on this particular one. Just a real drowsy type one, have the aspect of just probably falling asleep after you smoke a bit within those tones. It's a real nice apple type one. I'm trying to think of some other ones like Ham Shabam is a real nice bop on here. It's like a ritzy kind of nightclub bounce kind of get here. It gets things hopping pretty quickly. I'd say definitely goes with Speculations. I'd say, and it's like a horror kind of buzz bop to kind of get within that tone. Now, this is the sort of social aspects that Twiztid. I think I remember saying, it's been a while since I reviewed Mirror Mirror. I want to say I reviewed that back in 2022, but the aspect behind that, Mirror Mirror, the previous album to this one, definitely needed like a single, some type bop. I mean, that was a real head trip of like a horror case there. Just a real, that was an excellent project, but it's just kind of concept that was more in within its smog of being tripped out. But this particular, I do like some of the social bites. Some of these were more so most tasteless, and Freek Show were just kind of more house party localized type affairs. There actually are some night venue club type bops kind of get off this particular album just within the pitch behind it. So some good type fare. At least Speculations, Nicotine, Ham Shabam are some good ones for that sort of tone. I'm the only one with Shaggy 2 Dope's another nice one as well. It's like a darker kind of on the town hopping bop. I'd say just takes it back to like the Freek Show days. A little bit of most tasteless in there as well. It's like a horror. Yeah, it's definitely like some hop and bop horror to kind of get here. Just get errands done, a productive kind of hop to it, and it just has some dark shrouds about it in particular as far as those pitches kind of go. Yeah, so I'm the only one. It's like a nice good stroll to kind of get towards it as far as those pitches kind of happen there. I'd say Wondering Why is a nice bop to kind of get as well. This is kind of like a club type one, kind of get within that relative social one. Wondering Why is like a brooding kind of autumn shrillness kind of get here. Just wide awake kind of night shift fun to kind of have. Definitely a house party primer to kind of get within that, and it's just some litty times to kind of have. Yes, just some good excitement to kind of get within this particular song. Just a good one to spark things up, just get to the pitch. Kind of like more house party type appeal, just like White Trash with Tattoos, but just a little bit more has the same sort of appeal as White Trash with Tattoos, but just a little bit more revved up just within the pitch behind it. A little bit more of an excitable song just within the pitch. Just real, I like the concept of this wide awake type fare. Just really getting ready to get bliss and hop to it. Just a good aspect to really get crazy as far as those fares gonna happen. Trying to think of some other songs I haven't talked about here. Frankenstein, I don't think I talked about this one. This has Blaze You Dead Homie on there. It's like a creepy, Frankenstein's like some creeping kind of autumn music kind of get within that tone. Just some night sparkle, just weaving through residential hoods, I'd say, in like the late haze. You know, just typical kind of gas station run type music kind of get in particular. Some of that type fare. Like, I feel like The World is Hell is another one like that as well. Some of those type ones in particular. Serial Kill is another one like that. So there are some localized type ones. It's typical, like most tasteless days. It's vintage Twiztid within that fare, I'd say. Good concept to have Blaze You Dead on there. He was like the wingman Twiztid back in the day. He was like probably third in line, like the biggest on like ICP's Psychopathic Records after ICP and then Twiztid, I'd say. And probably Anybody Kill is probably tied with Blaze You Dead from what I remember. That's a good pitch about that. So You Don't Want to Be Like Me is another nice one as well. It's like a warped kind of smokage in your system as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just a two-step groove kind of get here. Just definitely like a night venue gem, I'd say, and some good step out. Yeah, I would definitely say You Don't Want to Be Like Me is some good step out just within the pitch behind it. Just the moments of just leaving You Don't Want to Be Like Me is just some good moments of leaving the household as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just the aspect of just being amongst like a night venue, just basic concept of like some good type. Not quite as crazy as Speculations and Ham Shabam, but definitely within the same night as some of those type ones. Just a little bit more initial type pitch, just feeling good, feeling right within the concept of being on the fritz and bliss as far as those pitches kind of happen with it. Good type tone. The World is Hell is a nice one as well. This has Isham on there, which is pretty excellent pitch. Just like a leery kind of late day creep around to kind of get within that tone. Just some ghastly commerce, definitely I'd say. Just standard errands and tasks I feel like about this song is pretty super one. You know, just kind of amongst the night as far as those pitches can happen. Goes pretty well with like, I would say Frankenstein, some of those type of ones. I'd also say Everybody Dies, some of these type of pitches, and it's kind of the aspect of just some more night commerce just within the fare behind it. Just good type concepts for some of that. It's the standard errand runs of just picking up supplies, some of that good type stuff, getting some errands done. Basic. The World is Hell is not as much of like a primer for excitement as far as those pitches kind of happen, but it's just within the tone of just like the standard comedy to just late night thrills as far as the pitches kind of happen, to just getting some tasks done within the aspect of just being more kind of stone-faced about the concept of just being more stone-faced about the concept of getting work done as far as those pitches kind of happen. But it is a productive song. Just look within the tone behind it. Just some leeriness, just that standard ghastly type fare, just a little bit not quite as makeshift bound as like the singles are, and then a song like like Marsh Lagoon, but definitely within the aspect of like the relative concept, probably something that's just once things are done for about 30-50 minutes, some of those type pitches, the initial moments are just like, okay, I'm gonna finish up these last moments, then get to some of that. So some good type tones. I don't know if I talked about Everybody Dies, so this is another highlighted one on here. It's like a local and neighborhood kind of hop and bop. I would definitely feel like this autumn wise. Everybody Dies is like a local and neighborhood hop and bop autumn wise. I'd have to say here, just reminds me of like Freek Show. I definitely feel like this definitely has some shrillness. This vintage kind of haunting, twisted is within the pitch behind this. Another ghastly type one. This is the concept what I talk about here with saying some of these songs, that this is like a usual kind of haunting fare behind it, but in terms of like some of the shrill type ones, like a beat like Bags or a beat like People Are Strange, some of those type of ones, or some of the other ones, or some ones that were kind of a lot more like some ones that were kind of a lot more shrill off of like Freak Show, some of those type of appeals. I mean, this is just a little bit more of like a looming and kind of moody kind of aspect, just like that ambient, a little bit more ambient this time, more so than crazed. But I think it's just a contribution towards just being kind of torched as hell as far as those pitches kind of having just the aspect of just having the enjoyment factor. The enjoyment's real high on this particular album, which I definitely like. So it's kind of the concept, whether it is amongst the makeshift or just whether it is amongst the concept of makeshift or just getting errands done, standard stroll, some of that type pitches, just local type stuff, and the whip type stuff, just the pitch behind it, house party type appeal. For the most part, it has the optimism about it, just to be able to say there's some good times afoot just within the pitch behind it. So I do like the particular product this album's not quite as it's brooding, but it's just within the concept. It's really not that foul just towards the concept of just like standard kind of just like some. It's not malaise. I'd have to say you'll notice I haven't mentioned malaise too often. But so I think I talked about every song on here as far as those pitches kind of happen. I think that virtually wraps up all of the 15 songs. It takes So this is a classic here, just to be able to say that within the tones of 15 out of 18 is definitely a 10 out of 10. Once again, I think I covered every single song on here. Yeah, I think I talked about every song on here. So the social score is going to get, I think that's kind of tricky actually. Just being able to say, I would either give the social score like a 9.75 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. Probably like more over leaning to like a 9.75 just within the pitch that this is a classic here in terms of Juggalo type fare, early 2000s and just 2000s Juggalo music. Definitely a banner Juggalo album just within the pitch. Classic Twiztid within the fares, just within the aspect behind it. The singles, there were 2 singles, which Twiztid usually only had 1 on albums before this, and sometimes not at all, like on Mirror Mirror. Look after just within the tone. They had a lot of big names on here. They had Lazy Bone, Tech 9, Blaze You Dead, Bushwick Bill, E40, Esham, the ICP members, some pitches like that. Just a lot of excellent stuff on here. But this is kind of the concept that I feel like the energy was just a little bit more crazed on Freak Show. I felt like they were a little bit more lively in pitches like that, which I definitely feel like there's some good grooves on here, but this is kind of the concept of just being a little bit more a saunter type music, a little bit it has more ambience about it, and this in like a horror type sense. Definitely some makeshift horror and ambience just within the tone, but in terms of like shrill type ones and on the ferociousness of We Don't Die and some of those type pitches, just the overall it just felt like Freak Show is just more of a head case type album. This is a little bit more just sifting and pitches like that this time. A little bit more just ambient within the tone and just being more melded just within the pitch. But I look after within the aspects, still some vicious stuff, still gets a 10 out of 10, but probably 9.75 social. Just the aspect. There are some makeshift songs, pitches like that. I've described a lot of these just in the pitch of commerce, errands, pitches like that, nightclubs, some of that type fare, so it's good type stuff. But in terms of the future, like Twiztid supposedly working on stuff. The good news, some definitely excellent news is the fact that they dropped like House of Crazies with the ROC. They dropped an album like that in October 2024. Now, when I last checked with Twiztid, they had an album that was coming out in November 2024. I don't know what happened with that. There might be a Twiztid album going there. And on top of that, Monoxide Child and Jamie Madrox have both dropped new solo albums circa 2024. So some excellent type issues. There's plenty of Twiztid stuff within the forecast. They have plenty of albums. So definitely going to get some more of these. But this is a classic Juggalo album, just overall classic horror album in general.